Trump protesters take to streets over state visit. Protesters take to Britain's streets over Trump's state visit as Downing Street rejects calls to ban him, including petition with 1.4 million signatures. Thousands of people have taken to the streets of UK cities today to protest against Donald Trump's immigration ban. Demonstrators were out in force in London, Glasgow, Newcastle, Manchester, Birmingham, and Cardiff waving banners and placards in response to the president's executive order preventing citizens of 7 predominantly Muslim countries entering the US for 90 days. In London, thousands of activists gathered opposite the gates of Downing Street, turning Whitehall into a sea of posters and signs. Among the list of high-profile celebrities to appear were pop star Lily Allen and human rights activist Bianca Jagger, while outspoken Match of the Day presenter Gary Lineker was also spotted at the London event with sons Harry and George. Crowds of people dominated city centres all over the UK, with riot police brought in to keep order in London and ensure they did not boil over into violence. But despite the protests, Prime Minister Theresa May made clear President Trump's invitation for a state visit would not be revoked and reiterated her dedication to the special relationship. Politicians including Shadow Home Secretary Diane Abbott, Shadow Attorney General Shami Chakrabarti and former Labour leader Ed Miliband were also at the London march. Ms. Abbott told the crowd she had come on behalf of Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn. She said, "Donald Trump has been president for only a few days, and look at what he is doing. We need to resist the Islamophobia and scapegoating of Muslims. We have got to resist it whether it is in the United States or here in the UK." Shadow Attorney General Shami Chakrabarti told the crowd, "It is in sadness and solidarity that we gather here this evening. I also hope, friends, that we stand here in solidarity with all the world's women who the president has insulted and all the desperate refugees that he would spurn." Chants including "Donald Trump has got to go" rippled up the swelling crowds on Whitehall, while others shouted "No hate, no fear, and no ban, no wall." Traffic ground to a halt as the protesters spilled into the road. MPs including former Labour leader Ed Miliband, Green Party leader Caroline Lucas and Liberal Democrat leader Tim Farron also spoke at the event. Griff Tyson, 23, of West London, said he had to take a stand against Theresa May's complicit reaction to Trump's Muslim ban. He said, "It's emergency action to make a point, people won't take what he's doing. It might be democracy because he was voted in but people aren't having it. Theresa May has been complicit in his actions by refusing to condemn them, she's spineless. She just got home and did it through faux diplomatic channels. I'm here to show solidarity with the oppressed and suffering, and to be surrounded by like-minded people." Addressing the crowd, one Muslim refugee said, "America is a beacon of democracy and peace, but Trump's action will tear the fabric of American society. We call on all peace-loving individuals to stand firm and oppose all racist and xenophobic action." Meters away from the door of number 10, chants of "Shame on May" began to echo throughout the crowd. Former England footballer Lineker praised the crowds after the event and wrote on Twitter, "Well played London." Allen also tweeted throughout the event and described the crowds as beautiful people. Downing Street earlier stood firm on the decision to extend an invitation to Mr. Trump, saying, "We look forward to hosting the president later this year." The SNP's Westminster leader Angus Robertson fired up the thousands of activists in London with a chant of "No state visit." He added, "Friends, first they came for the Muslims, but we say something and we say no state visit for Donald Trump." Left-wing activist Owen Jones, who helped organize the protest in London, said, "Today we say with defiance, with determination, we will not stay silent." But a defiant Theresa May has stood by the decision to issue an invitation to Donald Trump to make a state visit to Britain in the face of the outcry over his controversial travel ban. The Prime Minister, who became the first world leader to meet the new U.S. President in the White House, faces demands from a petition signed by more than 1.4 million people to call off the visit. But appearing at a joint press conference in Dublin with Irish Prime Minister Enda Kenny, Mrs. May was adamant it would go ahead. The United States is a close ally of the United Kingdom. We work together across many areas of mutual interest and we have that special relationship between us, she said. I have issued that invitation for a state visit for President Trump to the United Kingdom and that invitation stands. Graphic designer Sammy Hayes, 23, said she joined the protest in solidarity with British Muslims, and to support minorities against whom she said Trump has discriminated. She said, I feel sick that anyone has the power to discriminate on the scale that he does. Refugees are human beings and they're not being treated like that because of where they're from. Even if Theresa May doesn't do anything, protests like this show Muslims in this country that we're not against them. People have been targeting Muslims when they shouldn't be scared in our country. Fellow protester Philip White, 22, said, I think it's important when your family are Jewish, like mine, to recognize that refugees can still face persecution. People are still suffering and genocide didn't stop with the Holocaust. We can't be seen to appease his decision, even though it doesn't affect us directly. We approve if we don't fully oppose it. It's disgusting that we are sitting by and letting this happen. More than 700 people in Birmingham answered a Facebook call to protest against the president. The city's Victoria Square filled with people voicing their opposition to Trump's order banning nationals of 7 foreign countries entering the United States. Protesters also held signs aloft and cheered speakers as they joined a series of nationwide protests urging the Trump administration to drop the policy. The executive order prevents citizens from the majority Muslim nations Iraq, Syria, Iran, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and Yemen from getting into the country. The Foreign Office released a statement yesterday saying UK nationals with dual citizenship would not be affected, but the US Embassy has not clarified the US government's position. Hassanian Jafar, 29, who owns his own chain of independent optical stores, organized the Birmingham protest via Facebook. He said, I got the idea from a similar protest being organized in London. My family and I were extremely disturbed by everything that's going on and we were looking for something similar. When we saw there wasn't a protest, I set one up immediately so we could attend one. It's amazing how fast it has grown in just 24 hours. I just needed to get it started and now people have flocked to it. We are adding our voices to an international chorus of protest. We are a really diverse city and what Trump has done flies straight in the face of our values. It just doesn't fit with us. We are not a city that turns people away. We need to stand up and show Trump, and our politicians, that we really care. His order is a clear restriction on a specific group of people without justification. The alternative would be to just let them get away with it, and we cannot do that. In Scotland, demonstrations began in the early evening. The largest protests were in Glasgow and Edinburgh where crowds swelled from around 5 p.m., and protests were also evident in Aberdeen and Dundee. Placards and banners were held aloft in Glasgow as a crowd of around 500 people chanted "Hope Not Fear, refugees are welcome here." The protests were organized by a variety of groups including Stand Up to Racism, and refugees whose countries had been singled out by Mr. Trump. Demonstrations continued in George Square after a 3-hour rally in Buchanan Street, Glasgow. In Edinburgh, large crowds marched from the North Bridge to the U.S. Consulate in Regent Terrace. Hundreds also braved the rain and cold in the West Country to protest against President Trump's controversial ban. There were protests in Falmouth, Cornwall, Torquay, Plymouth, Exeter, Totnes, and Ashburton in Devon. In Exeter, one demonstrator said, "Those who don't learn history are doomed to repeat it." One of the Exeter organizers was 25-year-old Exeter Uni student Malaka Mohammed, whose family live in Gaza. She said it was vital people stood up to Trump's bullying. She said, "We want to stand up with Germany and Canada and other countries who are brave enough to speak out, unlike our government and Theresa May who have chosen to be silent."